There's a kind of pressure that feels responsible. It sounds mature, it looks disciplined, it gets things done. But underneath it, there is a quiet belief running the whole system. If I do not carry everything, everything will fall apart. That belief will make you productive, but it will also make you tired in places sleep cannot reach. And many women are calling that excellence. But sometimes it is not excellence. Sometimes it is fear with a planner. Hey, tribe! Welcome to another episode of the Becoming Her podcast. This is your host, Faye Jones, and today we're talking about the pressure of feeling responsible for everything. And I already know this one is going to touch some nerves, especially for the high capacity woman. Because high capacity women know how to get things done. They know how to step in, figure it out, solve the problem, carry the load, fix what is broken, and keep moving. And that ability can be a gift. The problem is not capacity. The problem is when capacity becomes identity. The problem is when you no longer know how to be valuable unless you are carrying something heavy. The problem is when rest starts feeling irresponsible because your nervous system, your habits, and your fears have been trained by pressure. Let's make the distinction clear. Responsibility is stewardship. Pressure is often misplaced trust. Responsibility says, God gave me something to steward, so I will handle it with wisdom, order, and faithfulness. Pressure says, if I stop, everything will collapse and it will be my fault. Those are not the same thing. One is rooted in obedience, the other is rooted in fear. And fear can look very disciplined from the outside, and it can look like the woman who answers every message immediately, the woman who never lets herself rest. The woman who keeps over-delivering because she is afraid people will be disappointed. The woman who works late every night because she does not trust that God can sustain what he called her to build. The woman who says, I have to, when the truth is, fear has convinced her that everything depends on her. That is where hustle becomes dangerous. Because hustle does not always start as rebellion. Sometimes it starts as survival. Sometimes it starts because you had no help. Sometimes it starts because people did leave things on you. Sometimes it starts because you learned early that if you did not handle it, nobody would. So now, as a grown woman, business owner, mother, leader, creative, minister, or builder, you keep operating like everything is still on you. And yes, it works for a while. That is what makes it tricky. Like, you can build momentum under pressure. You can hit goals under pressure. You can impress people under pressure. You can become known as reliable under pressure. But then your soul starts giving you clues. You get irritable. You cannot slow down. You resent people who ask anything of you, even when the request is reasonable. You feel anxious when things are unfinished. You cannot celebrate progress because you are already calculating the next thing. You feel guilty when you rest. You start viewing people as interruptions instead of people. That is not just a schedule issue. That is a worship issue. And I know that sounds strong, but let's be honest. Whatever controls your peace is discipling you. Whatever you believe you cannot live without is shaping you. Whatever you trust more than God's provision is becoming an altar. So when work becomes the place where you prove your worth, your identity, your discipline, your value, and your safety, work has moved out of its proper place. It has become a false god. And this does not mean work is bad. We are not anti-work. We are not anti-diligence. We are not anti-structure. We are not anti-ambition. We are not saying sit down and do nothing and call that faith. That is not what I mean. Diligence is good, stewardship is good, planning is good, excellence is good. But diligence becomes bondage when you can no longer separate your obedience from your anxiety. Excellence becomes performance when the work is no longer offered to God, but used to prove you are enough. That is the difference. And this is why so many women are tired. They are not just tired from doing too much, they are tired from carrying the spiritual weight of a lie. The lie says, this is all on me. The lie says, if I rest, I will lose momentum. The lie says, if I stop being the strong one, people will leave. The lie says, if I do not keep producing, I will become irrelevant. The lie says, if I cannot hold it all together, I am failing. That lie is heavy, and God never asked you to build under that weight. This is part of the larger conversation I unpack in my book, Righteousness in the Marketplace. It is for women who are trying to build, work, lead, and create without losing themselves to hustle, manipulation, performance pressure, or the need to prove. If this gives language to something you have been carrying, you can learn more at fayjoneslive.com/rim. The book is available through my website, Apple Books, Barnes & Noble, and wherever else books are sold. Now, let's talk about what it looks like to come out of this pressure. Because the answer is not laziness. The answer is partnership. There is a difference between working with God and working like God is watching from a distance while you try to hold the whole thing up. Some of us say God is our source, but our schedule says something different. Our anxiety says something different. Our refusal to pause says something different. Our resentment says something different. And we say we trust Him, but we keep making decisions like the whole business, the whole family, the whole ministry, the whole future depends on our ability to keep pushing. And God is gracious enough to let us feel the weight of what we keep taking back from His hands, not to punish us, to show us the truth. Sometimes the heaviness is information, it is a warning light. It is your soul saying, this is not stewardship anymore. This is self-reliance. And the way back begins with honest inventory. Ask yourself, what am I carrying that God never assigned to me? Where did care turn into control? Where did responsibility turn into pressure? Where did diligence turn into identity? Where am I afraid that if I stop, everything will collapse? Those questions matter because you cannot surrender what you refuse to name. A lot of women want peace, but they do not want to admit how much control they are holding. They want rest, but they still want to be the source. And they want God to help them, but they do not want to release the fantasy that their strength is what keeps everything together. That is pride. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind, the kind that hides inside responsibility, and the kind that says, no one can do this like me. The kind that says, I cannot let go. The kind that says, I know God provides, but I still have to make sure. And let's be clear. There are things you are responsible for. You do have bills, you do have commitments, or you do have people depending on you. You do need wisdom, you do need discipline, but you are not responsible for being God. You are not responsible for controlling every outcome. You are not responsible for carrying tomorrow before God gives you grace for it. You are not responsible for proving your worth through exhaustion. That is not your assignment. So, what is the practical step? Start by telling the truth about one area where pressure has been discipling you, not 10 areas. One, maybe it is your content schedule. Maybe it is client communication. Maybe it is how quickly you respond to everyone. And maybe it is how much you over deliver. Maybe it is how often you say yes because you are afraid of disappointing people. Maybe it is the way you keep working past your capacity because rest feels unsafe. Take that one area before God and ask, what did you assign? What did fear add? That question can change everything because sometimes what God assigned is simple, but what fear added is a whole empire. God may have told you to write. Fear added, post every day or you will disappear. God may have told you to serve. Fear added, be available to everyone all the time. God may have told you to build. Fear added, build fast so no one thinks you are behind. God may have told you to steward your gifts. Fear added, prove to everybody that they were wrong about you. That is how hustle becomes a false god. It takes something good and turns it into proof. But God is calling you back to partnership, not passivity, partnership. You work, but you do not worship the work. You build, but you do not bow to the pressure. You show up, but you do not make visibility your provider. You plan, but you do not trust the plan more than the God who gives wisdom. That is clean building. That is mature stewardship. That is the difference between responsibility and self-reliance. So here's the recap. You are not responsible for everything. You are responsible for obedience. You are responsible for stewardship. You are responsible for telling the truth about what you have been carrying. But you are not responsible for being the source, the savior, the provider, the fixer, and the foundation all at the same time. That seat is already taken. This week, ask God to show you where pressure has been wearing the language of responsibility. Ask Him to show you what He actually assigned. And then have the courage to put down what fear added. That is how the growing can continue. You can listen to the Becoming Her podcast on my website, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or Spotify. Follow or subscribe so you do not miss the next episode. And if this episode helped you name the pressure you have been carrying, leave a review. Reviews help the podcast become easier to find and help this message reach women who are ready to build differently.